Hello there, everybody. So I thought that I'd do something a bit different for this time-lapse video. Instead of my usual job of putting some music in the background, I thought I'd actually just give a bit of a kind of director's commentary as I go over this, because I thought it'd be quite interesting to just talk about the creative process and kind of how it comes together. I mean, obviously, jumping right into it, you can see that I've already done quite a bit of work on this already. I can't actually make these time lapses as you sometimes see them on here on YouTube, where you see the entire thing come together from start to finish, because these pieces that I make are actually made on quite large scale, and they take hours and hours and hours to draw, and so you simply can't do effective time lapses all in one go like that, because it can't. You can't get the frames for it. It can't render properly. But these parts at the beginning are just showing some of the different techniques that I use, and I like to use a lot of differentiation of line weight, and obviously a lot of my work, its main visual component, has a lot of these very heavy, thick black lines juxtaposed against spaces of hyper detail like this, with where I'm drawing the rocks here, and then also patches of white. So this has just come together over the years. I mean, if you're going to do effective kind of monochrome illustration or art like this, you've really got to be able to play around with different variations of line weight and different ways of actually rendering different kind of black and white forms, because the eyes really like that. When you can set up a contrast between all of these different elements, your brain really likes that. So that's what I'm just doing here. And I have to just say, I'm looking at some of this now, and when it's zoomed up like this, I mean, personally, from where I'm looking at it, it looks awful. It doesn't look anywhere near as good as the finished product, so I guarantee that this is actually going to be a piece that looks really good in the end. But when you zoom up really close to this, like on all of the lines, it doesn't look anywhere near as effective. It looks quite messy, actually. You look at these things as a whole, and like I said, it has actually come together really nicely now. And these are different parts of a composition that I'm making. This is actually a part of a castle in a background that has a humanoid face put into it. This piece called Remembrance is actually a bit of a homage, or it's inspired by some of the artists that I talked about in my last video called The Artists of the Fantastic Imagination. People like Patrick Woodroffe and Rodney Matthews especially. There isn't so much of the Dean influence in here. There's a gradient sky element that you'll see a bit later, that we could probably say that comes from Dean. But a lot of this, I can see a bit of Rodney Matthews in this. I can also see a bit of the craziness of Patrick Woodroffe as well. And this is very much like I was saying in that video about creating from the spirit of things instead of the image of things. Trying to tap into what the essential elements are in a particular artist's work, and then filter that through your own style. And yeah, as you can see here, this is what I'm talking about, where you've got these different variations of tone and texture, where you've got these really thick black parts, like the parts of the flame that I'm colouring in now, and then you've got these heavy white parts, and then you've got these patches of detail and stippling that add a lot of variation to the form and give it a nice dynamic. Just having a look at some of the parts here. Yeah, so this has actually come together quite well. I really like this part here that's coming up on the right. You see this kind of tentacle, how it's got that ribbed pattern to it and everything. I really like the way that turned out. I tend to draw very, very free flow. I don't usually plan a lot of things out that much. I kind of go with whatever the motion kind of takes me at the time. And over here on the other side, you can see this kind of dark, evil squid that I've made here. It's kind of like a Rodney Matthews esque creature. It's got these big, long, stylized eyes, and there's actually a human face in his forebrow, if you can actually make out that little pattern there before it pans up. Yeah, so just going up there again, same kind of thing with the other figure on there, same style, same aesthetics, but this time with a creature. And then in the background we're going to have the castle and other things going on. At this part we've actually done a lot of the main line work, you could say, that actually takes up the biggest part of the creative process. And then what I do is scan these little composite parts into the computer as a TIFF file, and then import that into Photoshop, get all of the line weight, the blacks right, and get all of the lines really clean on there, set the contrasts, and so my main figures is actually set properly with the just black and white parts. Then what I do is delete the background, so all of the white parts that would be on the page, all of that just gets completely deleted, and then I have empty spaces with which to fill with color like this. So what I usually do is just set a plain color black background. In this case it's kind of got this red sky. That'll actually get a bit more variation to it a bit later on, and then I just paint on top of that in all of the different parts. And this part of the creative process is actually a lot easier because you're essentially just colouring in. It's still quite a long process. It takes a long time to get all of these parts really good, because you've got to do a flat base of colour, yeah, like I'm doing now. So this is just going to be flat blue, and then in the background you've got that earth, which is just flat, but then you're adding up another layer of tonality on top of that, then you're adding textures, then you're adding shadow, you know, just try and make the thing look a bit more robust and a bit more polished. So this layer that I'm applying now is by no means the last layer. This is just the base layer of colour that I'm actually applying. So we've got all these stages to the creative process that have to go through. Though what I usually do at this point is put some music on in the background, or what I usually like to do is put something like a podcast or some discussion, or even a debate or something like that in the background. And I like listening to people talk whilst I do this, because even though this part of the colouring in, it's a lot less stressful and intensive would be the right word to describe it, compared to when I'm making all of this line work, though it is a labour, and it can get a bit monotonous if I'm being completely honest. So I like to have something on in the background just to kind of distract my mind whilst I'm doing all of these colours. And you can see here that all of this kind of detail and stippling, stippling is the little dots for those part of you that don't do this kind of work. It's where you make all of those little dots just to add a bit of tone and texture. This guy's actually got a rifle in his hands here. I'm going to tell you a bit about this piece actually. This piece is very loosely inspired by a work by Patrick Woodroffe that has always stuck in my mind, called The Grey Prince, and I'll just flash up an image of that actually on the screen here so you can see it. Yeah, so in The Grey Prince you've got this kind of blue being, and he's got this hunter's rifle and he's putting something in there, and then you've got this cityscape in the background, and it just looks like it's a really, really cool piece, and it's always stayed in my mind. So I wanted to do something that was a variation on a theme of that, not directly copying it part by part, making it very much my own, but using that as a kind of template from which to spring off. And so you'll see a bit later when we zoom out that this strange alien creature here that I've made has this rifle in his hand that he's holding. So yeah, just laying down the base parts of it really now. I tend to kind of work on parts very chaotically and sporadically. Like, I don't have, it may seem like there are definitely stages, general stages to the creative process that I go through, like the drawing, and then the detailing and the layering and the color and everything like that. But I tend to work on parts very much at random. So I might do a little bit here, for example, and then I might jump to another part of the piece, like the squid, and start working on there, and then jump back to the castle. You see this whole part here, that's actually been added onto the top, and I've actually used a bit of watercolour on part of it to just experiment with trying to get a bit of an organic texture. And as you'll see a bit later, the way that that's actually comes out in the end is a lot better than the way it looks now. This part just going around the circumference of what's a kind of an embryo that contains this little being inside that's kind of springing out of the mind of that alien creature. So this is a very, very strange piece. Not that any of my pieces aren't strange in any way, I suppose. But oh yeah, see that blue pop out there? We've just jumped then to another part of the another stage in the development of this piece, and I'm actually getting this really, really nice. It's almost like a cyan meets turquoise kind of look, and you can see in the background perhaps that we've already got this gradient sky thing going on. So yeah, let me just have some tea. My mouth's getting a bit dry. So yeah, you can see this gradient sky effect that's actually coming in the background. It's very reminiscent of, well, it's reminiscent to me of a lot of these late 70s and 80s artists. I always remember the gradient skies from back then, and whenever I see gradient skies in video games or in any other kind of media, I'm always reminded of these kind of artists. I just really like that that effect that they put in the skies there. And yeah, so here we've got these ribbed patterns. I think I showed this just to, yeah, I'm just changing the colour up a bit. Showed this just to try and get a bit of differentiation with the colours going, but I always try to be very conscientious of colour coordination and getting the conversation between the different colours working effectively, because you see some artists, honestly, not all artists have a good sense of colour coordination, believe it or not. They might be really, really good at drawing or good in some other area, but when it actually comes to intelligently or intuitively marrying certain types of colour together to create harmonious results, you'd be surprised at the amount of people who are artists who actually that they find that very very difficult. But for me, getting the right colours and marrying them together is one of the parts in the creative process that's very important, I think, and it's a part that I really enjoy, getting all of those colours right, because I have to be satisfied with the drawing, obviously, but when it actually comes to the coloration, and like I said, how those colours harmonise with each other, that's make or break for me. I mean, if I don't get the colour variation right, and if it doesn't feel right intuitively inside me when I'm doing it, then I can't finish the piece. I have to go back and I have to make modifications on it until I'm done. So this part, we're jumping over to another part of the piece, and I'm actually starting to colour in this big castle here. I'm actually laying down a very nice green, and this is originally the idea that I was going for in the beginning. I wanted this castle to have this kind of dark green aspect to it, but as you'll see a bit later when we start experimenting with some of the layers a bit and some of the filters which change all the colours around, you'll actually see that in the final version I settled on a different property for this, and it actually came out quite differently. But like I said, a lot of this stuff is actually done on the fly. I don't, it's not like designing a mathematical program in a piece of software or anything where everything has to be planned out before, and it's this really cerebral process where everything works like that. Some people have that idea about creativity, that it's like a mathematical program or something, or like something that's very systematic and thought out. And a lot of the time with artists it isn't. It's actually made in the moment, or you get into the creative process and new associations spring up, things that you hadn't thought about before, that change the direction of things. And that happens, I think, to all artists. It definitely happens to me. So here, just adding a bit of shadow to, you see these look so much better now than when I was actually working on them before, when they were black and white and zoomed in. This actually looks cohesive now. I'm actually quite satisfied with the way that these different tones are working together, and the different variation in the line sizes and the way that everything works together. We're actually adding on this kind of really nice texture now to some of the stonework on there, just to give it more of a realistic look. I mean, it's not true to life, obviously, but it just adds that extra nice tone to some of the stonework and makes it kind of stand out. Here over on the squid, now this is looking really nice now. You've got these kind of membranes on the side that are almost illuminescent. You can see them kind of glowing there. And that's sort of one thing I really like about digital. I was having a conversation with an artist friend of mine today about traditional media and digital media, and I was saying how I really like the best of both worlds. I have tried to work all on digital before because I was working under the presumption that it was quicker. But I found that it wasn't quicker at all, because even though some of the workflow is better for sure, I just spend so long on things, trying to get things to my liking, and it doesn't really cut down on any time for me. I always find a way to make the creative process a bit longer than I probably need to. You can see the eyes now are looking really good. They've got that glow to them, that kind of malevolent glow that I wanted to add in there just for a bit of cheese. And yeah, you can see that castle. Look at how the lighting's come on now, where we're messing around with some of the levels. This is where you can get some really, really interesting effects. See that just painted on there, but you just change them about, change the opacity, find one that suits you. And this is by no means finished, by the way. So you can actually get a better look at that creature now. You can see he's holding the rifle, and he has that huge, almost plumage erupting out of the top of his head, and all of this tendrillous life coming out of it. So like he's taken some kind of psychotropic drug, or like a hunter's drug or something, and his mind is mutating in real time. It's converging with his flesh, and he's out there. Excuse me. And so yeah, you've got some smoke effects in the background. You've got this kind of slime or lava, almost some kind of ooze emanating out of the mouth of that castle that's got the human face in. I really, really like the levels on this, making the sky look a bit better now. I'll add a few planetoids in the background in a bit as well, and some stars. Excuse me, I've just got a cough. My mouth is so dry from just talking consistently. Oh yeah, here are these planetoids now. Of course, you've got to put more than one in there. So yeah, we've got the 3 planetoids, and we're approaching the final parts of it now. Yeah, we've kind of fast forward. Look at how see what I mean about the colours? Look at how all of those colours have worked out now. Everything, all the levels are nice. The whole thing looks really cohesive now. It's coming together. You can see all of the colour differentiation there. I really, really like those blues on that. It's almost indigo on those tendrils there. I really, really love it. It's proceeding up. That watercolour has had a base underneath it, and we've changed around with some of the tones to really make it look at that blue. That's absolutely beautiful. Sorry if it sounds like I'm bragging about, my own achievements here, but you have to, as an artist, you have to be satisfied with what you've done. You're not going to actually finish any of these pieces unless there's strong parts about it that really speak to you. And there, the squid's looking excellent. I really like the coloration on him. There's reds. It reminds me so much of Rodney Matthews. That really reminds me of something that he'd create with those elongated, stylized eyes, and just the spikiness of it. How everything kind of erupts in these really sharp edges, but at the same time has that flow to it that's really characteristic of a lot of those artists here. Yeah, that's turned out very, very nice. I really like the castle and his eyes as well. I mean, that's gone quite nice. You can see the green in there as it's kind of, it looks a lot darker than the way we were painting it before. You've got some of these just like various patches of illumination on there just to make the castle look a bit more dynamic, a bit edgier. So we're coming to the final parts of this piece now. I think I've actually got to do a bit more work on the sky, actually. Yeah, that's it. I knew there was a part missing. I knew there was another part missing. It was those damn stars that I forgot to put up there. So yeah, we've actually got some stars in there. Getting closer to the way that the final version worked. We're just messing around with a few different levels now to see how things work out. See how the castle's changed? See how much the castle's changed from where it was before, where it was really green, and now it's almost got that kind of purplish tone to it. So that was a decision that was made very late on in the creative process. I was actually originally going to settle on green, and then finally in the last minute it converted to purple, and those blues have really come out now. I mean, that figure in the foreground really stands out. Looks really, really nice. So, yeah, I'm quite happy with the way that this whole thing has turned out. I think you've got all of those necessary elements in there as well. You've almost got like I said, the gradient skies. You've got the flow that usually shows up in, XELASOMA work anyway. That's the way that I naturally kind of organize shapes. There's not a lot of angularity to my work. It's usually flows like water or like slime. It's very organic in that respect, but you've got that element. But this kind of reminds me a lot of something that Woodruff or Rodney Matthews would make. It's got that kind of chaos about it, but at the same time there's an elegance to it. There's a sophistication, a beauty in any sense. But anyway, this has been my video for Remembrance. I hope you've really liked this commentary. I hope it's given you a bit of an insight into some of my creative process, and I think I'll leave it there now. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I hope you like the piece. You can get the piece in imprint if you really want to get a print for it. Look in the descriptions below. And yeah, as usual, I'll see you again.